Police and thieves in the street.
Laura Richards, Chief Executive Officer and Director of Paladin National Stalking Advocacy, states abuse is abuse, online as well as offline. Victims are never to blame. Dorset Police have failed on a regular basis in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010 and 2014 after several arrests of this man, Ronnie Hobby, for proven homophobic abuse and threats of violence against his elder brother to deal with Ronnie Hobby. Both they and the CPS have stated on several occasions that his crimes against his elder brother are not in the public interest to prosecute. Ronnie Hobby's crimes against his elder brother encompass proven violent homophobic death threats to his elder brother, partner and pets, proven contract killing arrangements, publishing his elder brother's address and inciting homophobes to visit his home and give him a severe bashing. The Dorset Police and Crown Prosecution Service forced his elder brother into his own civil action, which resulted in a 4-day-long trial spanning 12 months. His Honour District Judge Nicholas Murphy found Ronnie Hobby guilty of 8 allegations, including the 3 mentioned, pointing out they were criminal acts. This has resulted in an indefinite until further order family court's protection order on Ronnie Hobby to protect his elder brother, who is in his 60s. However, despite the protection order being one of the strongest imaginable, despite every provision of the order now having been breached by Ronnie Hobby, including re-victimisation of his elder brother and partner, Dorset Police have flatly refused to prosecute, again on the grounds that it is not in the public interest to prosecute. Instead, Detective Inspector Joe Williams offered the victim of Ronnie Hobby mediation, or to use its contemporary terms, community resolution and restorative justice. This makes a total farce of the fact that the victim of Ronnie Hobby spent a whole harrowing, anguish-filled, distressing year in the courts to obtain a family court's protection order of a very strong nature that is not worth the paper that it is printed on, despite having automatic power of arrest for breaches. It is worthless if the police refuse to act on those breaches, as they do, not just in this case, but in so many reports from around the country of victims of domestic abuse and violence. The IARS Institute, along with Vera Beard, Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner, and other organisations, believe that it is inappropriate to offer restorative justice, community resolution, mediation to victims of domestic violence and abuse. These were always intended to only be offered to crimes of a lower nature, never for domestic violence and abuse. The Argus, June 2014. The Association of Chief Police Officers, who, by the way, are being disbanded at the end of March 2015, has warned community resolution should be used only for less serious offences, but has been found, as in Dorset, to have been used in sex, violence and firearms cases. Dorset Police has admitted there is a cost saving in using community resolution. It's almost 7 times cheaper than taking an offender into custody, not including CPS costs. Police and Crime Commissioner Martin Underhill refused to comment on the situation. Martin Underhill's 5 fake promises to victims, at least in the case of our elderly gay victims. All of these promises mean nothing, Mr. Underhill. As previously stated in the Argus publication, the Association of Chief Police Officers has warned community resolution should be used only for less serious offences. Vera Baird, QC, and Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria, says in this article here, community resolutions have a place for lower level crimes, not for domestic violence, which is a serious crime. Where 2 women a week are killed by their partner or an ex, ACPO needs to lead the way to ensure that no police force uses community resolutions for domestic violence. For Greater Manchester Assistant Chief Constable Gary Shewan to state that they are specifically tuned to low-level domestic abuse is poor. Dorset Police and Crime Commissioner Martin Underhill, Thursday 27th of November 2014. Domestic Abuse Conference, Cradle to the Grave, no excuse for abuse. However, this man, Detective Inspector Joe Williams, of the Serious Crime Investigation Unit at Dorset Police, believes that the victim of Ronnie Hobby is the one to blame. This man, along with the CPS, are victim blamers, and there is more than enough in current mainstream media saying that victim blaming by the authorities and the police has to cease. As Laura Richards says here, the director of Paladin, the government-approved stalking organisation, the victim is never to blame. Detective Inspector Joe Williams, seen here, would have been fully aware on the 7th of July 2014 when he visited Ronnie Hobby's victim at home in Bournemouth to give him the bad news that they were not going to prosecute Ronnie Hobby. He would have been aware of the ACPO guidance saying that the restorative justice in the form of mediation that you will hear him offering the victim should not be applied to victims of domestic violence, not even of low-level domestic violence.
And this is about now mediating and moving forward. Now, for that to happen, and I'm more than happy to try and facilitate that for you, but that's got to have your involvement and positivity behind it. Yes, it has.
Detective Inspector Joe Williams said, "We are determined to support victims in reporting these crimes and make sure those who inflict abuse are brought to justice." You don't really mean that, Mr. Williams. This is a forced priority. No, it is not, Mr. Williams. Dorset Police is committed to preventing these offences developing into more serious violent crimes. Another joke, Mr. Williams. I strongly encourage anybody suffering from this awful crime to report it and seek help. Help? You told our victims you wouldn't help them. Dorset Police had extra powers through the recently introduced domestic violence protection notices and orders to bar a suspected perpetrator of domestic violence from contacting a victim. Another big joke, Mr. Williams. This is the Family Court Protection Order, one of the types of protection orders Joe Williams has just described. This is a permanent and indefinite until further non-molestation family court's order on the known convicted criminal Ronnie Hobby that Joe Williams pretended to investigate for 8 months. Every provision of the order has been breached by Ronnie Hobby, and Mr. Williams refuses to act on the power of arrest to deal with this dangerous and violent criminal. This piece of paper is nothing more than an insurance policy that gives you peace of mind until you come to claim on it, that is. However, what Detective Inspector Joe Williams of the Dorset Police fails to grasp is that domestic violence is familial as well. Not just women are victims of domestic abuse and violence, but men are, and children are, and parents are, and siblings are. And yet he refused to do anything about Ronnie Hobby, would not offer him a caution, and insisted that he would only give the victim of Ronnie Hobby a stab at mediation. This is not acceptable. There is another part of the 7th of July 2014 recorded digital conversation with Detective Inspector Joe Williams of the Serious Crime Unit of Bournemouth Police, in which he lies about having consulted the CPS and the CPS telling him that the breaches of the order by Ronnie Hobby were not in the public interest to prosecute. The following email is from Detective Inspector Joe Williams' colleague, Auger, stating that he had liaised with the CPS, which is an outright lie, as the following email from July 2014, 2 months later, from Wessex CPS proves. From Victim Liaison, Wessex CPS. Dear Mr. Lee, we have spoken to DIJ Williams, who has confirmed that the decision not to prosecute was made by Dorset Police. The Crown Prosecution Service was not asked to provide any formal advice in relation to your complaint, and breaches of domestic violence protection order are dealt with by the police. November 2013, Victims Commissioner Baroness Helen Newlove has officially opened the Dorset Victims Bureau today. Baroness Newlove joined Police and Crime Commissioner Martin Underhill and Chief Constable Debbie Simpson at the ceremony at Bournemouth Central Police Station. Baroness Newlove, Victims Commissioner for England and Wales, said, "I congratulate the police and the Police and Crime Commissioner Martin Underhill on this excellent initiative. As Victims Commissioner, I'm looking for a step change in the way we care and support victims, and that step change is happening in Dorset. The Victims Bureau puts the needs of victims exactly where they should be, at the very heart of the criminal justice system." Dorset Police and Crime Commissioner Martin Underhill said, "Victims are at the heart of my work, and I will always put them first. I am excited to launch the Dorset Victims Bureau, which is the one of only 2 in England and Wales. By next year, the Bureau will grow into the first multi-agency victim service in the country, encompassing all of the criminal justice agencies, meaning that victims will be updated and supported as they travel the whole criminal justice journey. The Bureau next year will also assist those victims who, for various reasons, do not pick up the phone to report their crime to the police. However, when you report it to Dorset Police, especially Bournemouth Police or Martin Underhill, despite his victim's pledge, he has done nothing to help the 2 elderly gay victims of Ronnie Hobby." Baroness Newlove hails new Dorset Victims Bureau a step change. Victims Commissioner Baroness Helen Newlove has praised Dorset for leading the way in supporting victims of crime. If this is leading the way, we don't ask, what is the fate of people up and down the country? Helen, Baroness Newlove, the Victims Commissioner, advertises her email address on her website and encourages victims to contact her. Our victims have done so several times between 2013 and 2015, and not once has Baroness Helen Newlove had the common courtesy to respond. Our organisation believes that a large part of the £300,000 funding given to Martin Underhill, Police and Crime Commissioner of Dorset, by Mike Penning, the Victim Justice and Policing Minister, must surely go towards paying the salaries of these 15 members of the Office and Police Crime Commissioner's team. This is a January 2015 publication about Martin Underhill and his Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, in which Martin Underhill announces over £2 million granted to him. By embracing new ways of working and acknowledging the need to adopt new technologies, Dorset has been able to secure funding over and above the core policing grant, Martin Underhill, Dorset Police and Crime Commissioner, said. Last year, the Dorset Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner secured over £2 million of grant funding to help improve victim care and help fill in the gaps where provision is lacking. This is over and above the core policing grant and will go towards £30,000 for freedom courses to support victims of domestic abuse. This will include a pilot scheme offering freedom courses or pattern changing courses to male domestic abuse victims. Unless, of course, you happen to be homosexual male victims of domestic abuse, Mr. Underhill. Is it just because they're homosexual you ignore them, or is it because Mr. Jerry Coulter of the Dorset Victim Support Organisation supports and protects our victims? Or perhaps it is because you have very serious personal issues with Mr. Jerry Coulter, the chairman of the Dorset Victim Support Organisation, who protects and supports our elderly gay victims. Yet another drain on the public purse. She is permitted to sit in the House of Lords and collect her daily expenses for doing so. She collects probably a 5-figure sum for being the Victims Commissioner, and what do we see? No help for our victims. Serious action is required to stop policemen like this telling the victims lies and, in effect, actually assisting the perpetrators of the crimes against the victims, such as in our case, Ronnie Hobby, the convicted criminal, repeat offender, DV abuser and cyber stalker, actively assisted by Dorset Police and let off scot-free on a lie and a whim of officers that do not want to do the proper job.